Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Alex and today I was tagged by my friend Kat at Kat's Novel Adventures to do the Finally Fall book tag. Fall is one of my favorite times of year because Halloween is my favorite holiday, like so many other people, and the prompts for this tag are a ton of fun. There are 11 of them in total, the first of which is, in fall the air is crisp and clear, name a book with a vivid setting. This prompt was difficult because I wanted one book to go along with it, and I decided on All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. This is a deuteragonist story with characters on opposite sides of the Nazi occupation of France. Mary Laure is a young blind French girl who talks about her experiences living with her uncle, especially after her father has gone missing and nobody knows what happens to him. Werner is on the opposite side and is a member of the Hitler Youth, and he was recruited because of his aptitude with radios. Admittedly, this book is not just set in the fall, it covers multiple years of these characters' lives and so goes through a variety of seasons, including a very harsh winter, but I still think that this would be a great recommendation and I recommend it all the time. The second prompt is nature is beautiful but also dying. Name a book that is beautifully written but also deals with a heavy topic like grief or loss. That basically sums up the bulk of everything that I read, so I decided to go with two books for this prompt, and the first of which is going to be the 100 Years of Lenny and Margot by Marianne Cronin. Lenny is a teenage girl currently living in the hospital battling a serious illness, and she doesn't have any friends or family around her, so she decides to join one of the local art groups being hosted in the hospital to meet kids her own age. However, after she ends up joining the art program, she realizes that she doesn't have anything in common with the other kids that are her age and asks permission to transfer to the senior class where she meets Margot. Margot is a woman of many years with a heart condition, which is forcing her to live in the hospital as well. And as her and Lenny get to know one another, they start telling each other stories of their lives. I would also like to put forward Under the Whispering Door by T.J. Klune, which is a very recent read for me and does in fact take place in the fall. Wallace Price has lived his life as an absolute bastard, being a successful lawyer who suddenly finds himself dead, much to his chagrin. A reaper named May shows up and takes Wallace to a place called Karen's Crossing Tea Shop, where he meets the ferryman named Hugo Freeman, who is ultimately tasked with helping Wallace cross over to the other side. I found both of these stories very meaningful, and I will also admit that I cried while reading both of them, so if you want a story that is really going to touch your heart, I could recommend either of these. The third prompt is fall is back to school season. Name a nonfiction book that taught you something new. The book that I decided to go with for this prompt is Will My Cat Eat My Eyeballs? And Other Questions About Dead Bodies by Caitlin Doughty. Caitlin Doughty is one of my favorite YouTubers of all time. She's a mortician, and all of these questions that are answered in this book were collected by children. So this is a really interesting read. You still learn a lot, but she has a lot of humor that she injects into these topics. The one thing that I will say about that is sometimes her humor can rub people the wrong way because they think that she's being crass about things that are rather serious. If you know anything about Caitlin's YouTube channel, you know that she's not a crass person. It just might come off that way in her writing. That's probably my only caveat and the only thing I would be hesitant about with readers if they don't know who Caitlin Doughty is, but outside of that, this is a great read. Up next is In Order to Keep Warm, It's Good to Spend Some Time with People We Love. Name a fictional family, household, friend group that you would like to be a part of. Okay, this is not going to be a fall recommendation at all. This is a science fiction recommendation, and that is going to be The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. This is the first book in the Wayfarer series, but don't let that intimidate you, as each book is technically a standalone novel. This is just the first one, and where the series gets its name because all of the crew members are aboard the ship called the Wayfarer. The Wayfarer has a diverse cast of alien, human, and AI crew members that handle the dangerous situations that they're put into in different ways. This is a feel-good novel where all of the characters are accepting of one another and they try to always be there for each other. Becky Chambers is known for her positive view of the future rather than everything just being doom and gloom for sci-fi, so I always recommend this to people. And I would also say that if you like queer representation in stories, Becky Chambers herself is a lesbian author, and she's just really great at handling that subject matter. The fifth prompt is the colorful leaves are piling up on the ground. Show us a pile of fall-colored spines. I'm a little ashamed to admit how long I took trying to get the grade of these spines to look nice, and I'm still not fully satisfied with it, but here you go. I wanted the yellow because how often do you see bright yellow spines on books? Not all that often. And then going into the oranges and the reds. Enjoy. And then we have fall is the perfect time for storytelling by the fireside. Show a book where somebody is telling a story. I don't know whether this is technically cheating or not, but I'm going with The Green Mile by Stephen King. We're following Paul Edgecombe as he kind of relives and retells the experience of meeting John Coffey on death row while he is an officer at the prison, and he's currently living in a retirement home facility, so everything that he's recounting is from the past when he was much younger. This novel is absolutely fantastic, and I have recommended it to people who have never read a King book before. This is actually the first and only Stephen King that Keaton has ever read, and he loved it. This is not traditional horror. I would definitely say that this falls more into the magical realism category, so if you're looking for a way to kind of ease into King to see what his writing has to offer, you should definitely pick this up. The nights are getting darker. Share a dark, creepy read. This is another very recent read, and that is Boys in the Valley by Philip Fracassi. This is about an orphanage for young boys that's run by priests in a remote valley church. One night, the local county sheriff arrives at the door with a man who is bleeding out from mortal wounds, and he has all of these occult symbols carved into his skin. The arrival of this man effectively dooms the orphanage because what he's brought with him is a great evil that is going to start infecting the boys. The story is atmospheric, it's paced very well, it's interesting, and honestly despicable with what happens to the boys. I would definitely say this might be a book that if you're a bit more squeamish, you might not want to pick up, especially if you don't want to read about children brutalizing one another. But if what I just described to you sounds interesting, you should absolutely pick it up. I'm also going to recommend a graphic novel that, in my opinion, does not get talked about enough, and that is Through the Woods by Emily Carroll. This is a collection of illustrated short stories, and the artwork is immaculate. Do I think that the stories themselves are the best thing since sliced bread? No, not necessarily. I ended up giving this book 4 stars. However, the reason that I have not been able to get rid of it is because of the art. Like, the color palette is amazing and all of the artwork is creepy as shit, and you get that from just every ounce of this book. There's nothing overly gory in here because this is technically a teen book from Simon & Schuster. I probably wouldn't have advertised it as a teen book, but they did. But if you want something that's eerie and a quick read, you should definitely get a copy of Through the Woods. The days are getting colder. Name a short, heartwarming read that could warm up somebody's cold and rainy day. I really like this prompt because I think we can all stand to read things that just make us feel good sometimes. I'm one of those people that had to actually relearn that because the books that I tend to gravitate towards are very serious and deal with a lot of heavy topics. And that's not to say that a feel-good book can't deal with a heavy topic, but it's all about the way that it's framed. For all of these recommendations, I was going to only try to do one book from each author to make sure I kept things fresh, but I am going to do one duplicate just because I love Becky Chambers so much. But I am not doing the Wayfarer series. I'm actually doing her monk and robot novellas. If you are not familiar with these, A Psalm for the Wild Built and A Prayer for the Crowned Shy are part of her monk and robot series and actually has a non-binary main character. I would describe these books as gentle philosophy. They explore our place in the world, how do we find fulfillment in our life, and also why it's so important to take the time to take care of yourself so that you can take care of other people. I absolutely love these books. I gave both of them 5 stars and I'm really excited for her to publish more of them. My next recommendation for this prompt is actually going to be one that Kat recommended herself, and that is Garlic and the Vampire and its sequel Garlic and the Witch by Bree Paulson. These books are perfect for the fall. The color palette and the art style is immaculate. I can guarantee that if you haven't read these, you will absolutely love them. Your only complaint is going to be that they weren't longer. Up next we have Fall Returns Every Year. Name an old favorite that you'd like to return to soon. I actually have 2 books that I'd like to return to, The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman and A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. The Graveyard Book is about a young boy who gets raised by ghosts in a graveyard when he gets separated from his family, and they call him Nobody Owens, or Bod for short. The book follows Bod as he grows up and has these unique magical experiences because of course he's being raised by ghosts, so a lot of weird things happen all the time, but you get to watch him kind of find his own path and decide what he wants to do with his life. A Monster Calls is the story of Connor, who has this yew tree that's outside of his window, and one night it comes to life and it turns into this big hulking monstrous creature that kind of takes Connor out of his window and proceeds to tell him stories. There's a lot of metaphor and symbolism that happens in this book, and it's ultimately about Connor trying to work through his emotions as he's dealing with some pretty serious things that are going on in his life. The artwork in this book is absolutely impeccable. If you have never seen this before, I'm going to show you an example of one of the drawings. I mean, this book is wild. There's illustrations all throughout, and this is another one of those books that I feel like not enough people ever talk about, or maybe people read when it first came out and then they kind of forgot about it. I have never forgotten this book. I very clearly remember the emotions that it evoked in me and how moved I was by this story. Another book that really made me cry. Highly recommend that you get this. If you've never heard of it, you are missing out. And lastly, I have fall is the perfect time for cozy reading nights. Share your favorite cozy reading accessories. I have a lot of accessories that help me to feel cozy, so I'm actually going to start with my warm beverage keeper. So I am somebody that I love to have a hot beverage, especially when it's cold out, but I do not drink my drinks fast enough for them to still be hot when I get to the bottom. So I absolutely have to have a little warmer. And the mugs that I enjoy drinking out of, I have 3 of them that are fall themed. So I have this one, which is the largest, that's covered in pumpkins and leaves and has an orange inside. I have a pumpkin cat, so the outside is the pumpkin and then inside is a little cat, and I just think that it's really cute to see the cat just kind of like looking up at me. And the last one, but certainly not least, is a mug that I have 2 matching shirts for, and there are times that I will go into work and I will drink my drink out of this while wearing a matching shirt, and everybody always thinks it's an absolute gas. So I love this mug. This is probably the one that I've used the most, to be completely honest with you. The next thing I want to show you is a blanket, which is very on theme and something that Kat would absolutely love because she's a big fan of Edgar Allan Poe. This was a gift from a friend of mine. I'll try to show as much of it as possible, but it is a quote from one of his stories, and the other side is like that warm fleece that's probably completely covered in dog hair. Love that for me. But yeah, this is cozy, and I always use it during my reading sprints, especially in the wintertime because my office can get a little cold. My next 2 accessories are a neck light, which I really enjoy, and I usually put a washcloth on the back of this just because it helps to not have my neck resting against really hard plastic, and a pair of headphones. These are noise canceling. I am somebody who is incredibly sensitive to sound and easily distracted, especially by voices. So these are super helpful, and I really love listening to Halloween lo-fi. If you haven't ever done that, you should. And last but certainly not least are actually some of my most used accessories, because every time I travel with a book, I always put them in a book cozy. Now, I have a ton of these, and I actually have a whole collection, enough that I have some for every season, so I try to pick ones that were very themed for around this time of year. The first of which is going to be this like tree and ghost dress one. I can't really describe it better than that, but it kind of reminds me of like a haunted woods in a way, and I really love the color of this. I think it's super fun. Then I have the most basic bitch one that I own, and that it's a pumpkin spice, which is funny because I really don't drink or eat anything that's pumpkin spice, but I do love the aesthetic of pumpkin spice things, so I bought this one too. And lastly is something that's very on brand for me, which is a flannel cozy. I love flannel. I wear flannel for about 5 months out of the year. It's a huge part of my wardrobe. I'm wearing it right now, so I absolutely had to have one of these, and I'm hoping to have a bigger collection of flannel book buddies in the future. And that's everything I have for my Finally Fall book tag, which means it is now time for me to tag other people, and I have selected 3. The first is Melinda from A Web of Stories, and then we have Nicole from Noteworthy Fiction, and Jessica from This Kiwi. Hopefully you all haven't already filmed this and done it, I apologize if you have, but you're getting tagged again. And for the rest of you, I really hope that you enjoyed this book tag video and enjoyed these recommendations. If you were interested in reading any of these books or have read any of them, please let me know down in the comments below, as I always love to hear from you. And as always, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day or evening, that you all stay safe out there, and I'll see you next time.